So I'm going to do this new series review style, kind of like Pie Guy Rules does SpongeBob, just because as it stands, this project was going to take years to finish. So I'll be doing these speed reviews to give basic points, say if it's a crappy cartoon, animated angel, or episode, and explain why, and maybe go into further details in full-fleshed reviews. So, let's dive in. Episode 1, Not So Happy Campers, Part 1. 22 different contestants arrive at the island to find that they will be living in a run-down summer camp for 8 weeks. They are divided into 2 teams and learn the rules of the competition they will be taking part in. Later, the host announces that their first challenge, jumping off a cliff in the shark-infested waters, will soon begin. This episode was mainly a rundown of how the series is to come and work, and really doesn't allow for interaction very much, so I have to give it an episode. This isn't bad, but it isn't good. There are moments of comedy, but there are very few and far between. Episode 2, Not So Happy Campers, Part 2. The 2 teams faced off on their very first challenge, jumping off a 1,000-foot cliff into a small, safe zone surrounded by shark-infested waters and building a hot tub out of materials they find in crates at the base of the cliff. As one team bonds rather quickly, the other team already finds itself falling apart. One person finds herself on the chopping block, but it is someone's sexist views that gets him voted off the island first. Again, not great, not bad. Episode. You could argue Ezekiel's sexist comments could lean this towards a crappy cartoon layer, but I feel like it's such a small thing that it doesn't even really matter. There's still comedy, actually more so than the last episode, as the characters actually get to interact more than the last episode, and while there's more of it, it's still, not very good. It's not bad, though. So, anyway, meh. Episode 3, The Big Sleep. The 2 teams set out on a 20-kilometer race and eat a buffet, only to discover that it wasn't the actual challenge. They must complete an awake-a-thon, a challenge testing their endurance and seeing how long they can stay awake. The camper who is the last to fall asleep wins for their team. 2 contestants start a bond, while another spends their time sleepwalking. As the first alliance is formed, another camper is voted off the island due to an opposing team member's meddling. There's nothing that goes on in this episode. It's so boring. In fact, I played the Awake-a-thon with them just watching this episode. It's such a shame Nicole Demers wrote this episode. She's really good at writing for Ruby Gloom, but Total Drama, she just gave up. It really shows with its lack of humor, or really lack of anything that goes on in this episode. Episode 4, Dodgeball. The 2 teams participate in a 5-round game of dodgeball. One team dominates and the other team thanks 2 members displaying surprising skill. That is until someone is forced to take charge of the opposing team, which turns the tides of the game. Ultimately, it is an unlikely hero who determines the final outcome for the team. Another camper is eliminated for throwing nothing but sarcasm at his team. Ah yes, the first of Alex Nussbaum in Total Drama. This episode is pretty bad when it comes to characters and how they act. I admit you, it's only the 4th episode, but with characters like Harold, Courtney, and Owen, we've seen enough of them in the past 3 episodes. Yeah, Noah isn't even my issue with this episode. It's most of the other characters. I also have to call bullshit with Harold and his Matrix skills. To me, it just feels like one of those Alex ass-pulls we'll see in later episodes. Episode 5, Not Quite Famous. The 2 teams participate in a talent show and the rivalry between 2 campers grows rapidly after a shocking event. After 2 strong acts from one team and 2 disasters from the other, it all seems lost for them until, out of the blue, one camper unexpectedly pulls out some amazing talent and gives his team the win. To save herself from inevitably being voted off, a manipulative camper tricks some of her other teammates into voting off one of the hottest campers. This episode is pretty bad, too. Heather gets away with reading Gwen's diary on international television, and everyone agrees that it is fucked up. And yet Heather gets away with it. This alone could make it a crappy cartoon, but simply put, I find the majority of this episode to be boring. The bulk of this episode is just contestants practicing, and while it's not bad, it's just simply disinteresting, and honestly feels like there's no reason behind Justin's elimination. At least with Noah, Eva, and Ezekiel, you could see why they were eliminated. With Justin, it's just like he's gone because fuck you, that's why. So yeah, it's a crappy cartoon. Episode 6, The Sucky Outdoors. The 2 teams must spend an entire night alone in the woods. While 2 teammates are lost in the woods, they start a fight that jeopardizes their friendship. One camper pulls a prank on her team, another contestant is voted off the island, leaving another incredibly sad. I actually have to give this a lot of credit. We see actual character development in this episode from several characters, some more subtle than others, like Bridget. Also, the humor works nicely in favor of this episode, especially on the Gopher side of things. This, overall, is a pretty solid staple in Season 1, and in my book, is easily an animated angel. Episode 7, Phobia Factor. After the previous episode's elimination, a discussion of fears evolves into a fear-facing challenge, thanks to some eavesdroppers. Most of the campers conquer their fears, but a few others don't fare well. Another camper is voted off for being too afraid to face his fear. So, it's not actually all that often that we dive into the fears of characters, especially not like this. Instead of a one-off fear episode like most shows nowadays do, where the main character has a fear and conquers it in one episode. Some contestants in this episode don't conquer their fears, which is a real thing that can happen in the real world, and it is nicely portrayed in this episode. Hell, oftentimes these fears come right back up in later episodes, which is wonderful. I also enjoy how specific some of these fears are, like Cody's fear to defuse a time bomb under pressure, Duncan's fear of Celine Dion cardboard standees, or Courtney's fear of specifically green jelly. And while these fears are played for laughs, and are played quite well, this is also an episode we have any signs of continuity, as the episode starts where the previous one ends. So, yeah, this is definitely an animated angel, at least in my book. Episode 8, Up the Creek. The two teams take their canoes to a nearby island and build rescue fires. Two campers become closer due to an intervening of a friend, while an unlikely partnership ultimately wins for its team. At the same time, someone begins to return to their crush's feelings despite their sappy gift. Unaware of the consequences, somebody picks up a cursed idol which curses their team, while another contestant's past catches up with her, causing a sudden elimination. I have covered this enough times you could recite what I'm about to say. It's a crappy cartoon. The inconsistent pacing, the characters that are out of character, the ass pulls throughout the episode, yada yada yada. I have a review dedicated to this episode, so I think enough is said. Episode 9, Paintball Deer Hunter. The two teams compete in a paintball competition with members of each team divided into hunters and deer. One member of an alliance stands up against their leader, which causes her team to lose. Later, one camper is voted off after being mauled by a bear. This episode has its ups and downs. On the one hand, it's nice to see Beth stand up to a Heather alliance that gets so far played out in hindsight. It's also an episode that isn't short on comedy either, but the downside of the episode is it's mainly focused on the Heather alliance. Heavily. There's almost nothing else in this episode aside from some cutaways to Owen, who thankfully saves this episode. But barely. So it's an episode leaning towards crap. Episode 10, If You Can't Take the Heat. The two teams compete in a cooking challenge. One person's passive attitude towards hygiene prompts three campers to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, on the other team, two people's conflict reaching is a boiling point when one takes the leader's role for the challenge. In the end, one contestant is voted off the island for cursing her team. So yeah, that idol Beth took off in Boney Island and Up the Creek returns. Only as an ending thing really though, so let's not focus on that, but instead look at the episode as a whole. Which is meh. Half of this episode is really good. It's funny no matter how lowbrow it goes, and it's fun interaction between Jeff, Duncan, DJ, and Harold. Despite how mean it seems, they are teaching him a lesson. Now, the other side, on the other hand, is not that great. I've said this before, but Murphy's Law is not always your best bet for comedy, and this is probably a good example of being more annoying than funny. It tried its best, but Episode 11, Who Can You Trust? The two teams are put into the ultimate test of trust, pitting together vengeful enemies and potential relationships. One camper relies on a close friend to take care of his pet, but the friend fails to complete his duties. But, thanks to an unexpected favor from an unexpected camper, the pet is fine, as far as they know. The losing team eliminates its weakest link after convincing arguments, though the eliminatee finds the sweet in bittersweet. Oh, this is an evil episode, forcing campers who either have very negative interactions or barely interaction at all finally get some shared screen time, which is brilliant in character development and opens up to some pretty interesting hijinks. While I'm not a huge fan of the gross out found in this episode, it's only really found in one scene, and it's pretty quick, so it doesn't hurt this episode in the slightest. Letting it be an angel. Episode 12, Basic Straining. Someone forces the teams to go through several difficult obstacles designed to push the campers to their limits. One camper goes too far and ends up being sent to the boathouse by starting a conflict with the Master Chief. There he hooks up with another camper, who is not quite his opposite as he previously thought. That camper is then voted off the island under mysterious circumstances. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. From anyone I've talked to about this episode, you either love it or hate it. Perhaps some of you guys are in between, but in my experience, this is a one way or another episode. And whereas I can see the faults in the elimination, I actually do really love this episode. The Duncan-Courtney relationship becomes very interesting, albeit cut short due to the mysterious circumstances that is Harold, and really runs its course as best as it can, which really does leave you crushed when it's Courtney's time to leave. Duncan also really makes this episode a joy to watch. Doing anything he can to piss off Hatchet really left me in stitches. This is an angel beyond most other angels. Episode 13, Extreme Torture. Chris has the contestants paired off for the next immunity contest, a series of extreme sports challenges. Two girls begin a dispute when they find a sign of affection that someone left for his love. The same secret admirer sees an unexpected accident and gets an eyeful. Because of it, he is voted off the island and still gets some sugar. Another beautiful episode as far as humor goes. Total Drama really knows how to do its slapstick, and this episode is the best proof I can give of that. We also get some rather adultish humor as well from Harold, which honestly I think is beautifully done. However, that said, humor is as far as this episode goes. His character interactions are left sparse, with the exception of Gwen and Bridget, whose bickering is a bit distracting from the challenges for like a second before we get into the challenges themselves, which are kind of boring, honestly. So Extreme Torture gets in that. It by no means is a bad episode, but it's pretty par with other episodes. Episode 14, Brunch of Disgustingness. The two teams are divided up with the guys on one team and the girls on the other, and a conflict between two of the girls forces another to choose sides. The campers have to eat as many varieties of disgusting food in order to win an awesome prize. Ultimately, it is the eating habits of one side and the bottomless pit on the other that is determined who is victorious. This episode relies on gross-out humor, and a gross-out story, with about as much going on it as The Big Sleep. Can I just say this immediately right now? It's a crappy cartoon. Next. Episode 15. No Pain, No Gain. The two teams are officially dissolved, and two campers that were previously eliminated return to the game. The remaining campers are now forced to fend for themselves unless they have an alliance. The campers then face an excruciating torture challenge with individual immunity at stake for the first time. Someone wins the challenge, immunity, and an awesome prize, while somebody else is voted off again for her temper. This episode breaks what we know about Total Drama, and I'm kind of bouncing between absolutely hating it and absolutely loving it. On the one hand, they do bring back Izzy, which was an unfair elimination caused by Nussbaum. But on the other hand, they do bring back Eva, who is a very not likable character, and it rears its ugly head that she's not likable all throughout this episode. I guess the challenge is fine, but the rest of the episode just kind of leaves me hollow, so I have to give this kind of a crappy cartoon, if only barely. Episode 16. Search and Do Not Destroy. The remaining campers are off on a scavenger hunt for keys, and one camper does something so vicious that it destroys a relationship and makes another camper cry. Because of this, one camper tells everybody to vote them off. However, a different camper is voted off instead due to said camper gaining invincibility. Okay, one thing that bugs me about several of these episodes is the bad guy gets away with anything if they get in the invincibility, and Heather gets that a lot in these later episodes, and it hurts them in the process just because she doesn't get her comeuppance as much as she should, and this is one of those episodes where Heather just does the lowest of the low with virtually no consequences. And the bad part is you know she's going to get away with it, and it's just very infuriating to watch. Easily, this is a crappy cartoon, which is very unfortunate because the episode is a very funny one with tons of great lines from moments from Izzy, Jeff, and Owen. And it could have really helped this episode out if it wasn't so frustrating to watch. Episode 17, Hide and Be Sneaky. The campers play an extreme game of hide and seek with someone who hunts them down one by one with a huge water gun. Some campers start an alliance as other campers are slowly hunted down. One camper's amazing hiding spot and another joining the other side wins them invincibility. An unexpected camper is then voted off thanks to a new alliance. This is an episode too good for its own good. Every camper just has a wonderful scene in this episode, and Chef and Chris even have their own moments of glory as well. It may not stick out as much as a few other episodes in this season, but I'll be damned if I don't enjoy this one every time it's on. Animated Angel, easily. Episode 18, That's Off the Chain. As the campers build their own bikes using supplies and racing them in a dangerous motocross, one person takes somebody who has never learned how to build or ride a bike on a joyride. In the end, one camper betrays her best friend, leading to an explosive elimination. Simply put, the title says it all. This episode is way off the chain. Especially during the elimination of this episode. Oh my god, it's actually quite entertaining watching the campers do an insane bike race, only to have it end in what could be comparable to the Elder Swear if you didn't want every word you can't say in a television show, especially not a children's show. But if you don't mind it being censored, of course, this Animated Angel is definitely for you. Episode 19, Hook, Line, and Screamer. The campers go through a challenge where they are forced to survive a real horror movie. A psycho killer is picking them off one by one with the exception of two experts. The winner of the challenge is the last one standing. However, the challenge takes a frightening twist when somebody encounters the real killer. In the end, another person leaves the island for fearing someone who wasn't the killer. This is yet another really solid episode, especially considering the episode's twist at the end where, spoiler alert, Gwen finds the real psycho killer that is supposed to be on the loose. And Chris and Chef Hatchet's setup for a Halloween special. This is a really good episode. It's funny, its structure is neatly placed into a box, and it was easily well executed, making this an animated angel. Episode 20, Wawa and Aqua Gone Wild. The campers square off in a challenge where they must trap a certain animal. One person gets a delicious meal as a reward for catching their animal first, while two people form a temporary alliance. Two people get shot with a tranquilizer dart by an unstable contestant. Another ends up having very bad luck. This all leads up to someone getting voted off once again. While by no means is this a bad episode, this one had definitely some hurdles to jump over, and it did succeed as well as the previous other 3 episodes. But I guess it's alright. It has a callback to Paintball Deer Hunter, actually several callbacks, and has some very over-the-top humor. However, it's still an episode because, simply put, it only got a few moments of brilliance from Izzy's running gag, and Izzy's running gag does get tiring after the first 2 times. On top of that, the challenge is just kind of boring. Episode 21, Trial by Tri-Arm Triathlon. The 6 remaining campers are split into 3 pairs and must compete in various challenges using teamwork. Some groups have trouble working together, while another become friends with each other. Once the triathlon is finished and none of the teams win, it is revealed that nobody is safe. In the end, it turns out to be one of the nicest campers who was voted off the island. One thing I enjoyed about Who Can You Trust was the camper interactions that you didn't get a chance to see. And looky, this is a reprise of the same concept, and done with all the campers, instead of the selection that Who Can You Trust had. So, without repeating myself too much, this is also an animated angel. Episode 22, Hot Capture. The host visits a luxurious Playa des Luzos, and here, the previously eliminated contestants get a chance to talk about the final 5. The host then reveals a shocking twist. The eliminated campers will be voting on the next camper off. Thanks to 2 campers, a good friend of theirs is accidentally eliminated. Have I mentioned how much I hate Alex Nussbaum's ass pulls and for doing things for no reason? Yeah, guess what? He wrote this episode too. And not only was the elimination the absolute dumbest this season has seen, it may be the dumbest elimination on the whole show. But that's not all. No. Remember when I was left hollow by No Pain, No Game after it changed everything we knew about Total Drama? Yeah, this episode pulls a similar shark jump showing us the campers never even went home, but instead go to a place called Playa des Losers, which Eva kinda hinted in No Pain, No Game. And the premise. Oh, the premise. Have I never mentioned this before now? But I don't think I have. I've always felt like clip shows are the absolute laziest episodes you could ever throw together. And there are few that do this concept right. South Park is just one of those. But it's hard to get it right unless every moment is rememberable that you look back to, and there must be more to it than just clips. But when your clip show is about moments that aren't even memorable, not only do you fail as a clip show, but you are a crappy cartoon by no other definition. Episode 23, Camp Castaways. After a huge flood, the campers float away to a deserted island and try to fend for themselves while dealing with the dangers there, as well as enduring each other. Meanwhile, the hosts are having a day of relaxation on the same island. While the final 4 are separated at first, they eventually wind up back together again, and after someone's mental breakdown, an inanimate object is eliminated. Now, just listen to that premise, and tell me, how could that not be a great episode? I'm not even sure if it was supposed to be a challenge or not. It just kind of breaks the illusion that this was supposed to be a reality show to an extent. Oh, and easily makes this episode and beyond. It's an animated angel with great humor, an interesting premise, and funny character interactions. Episode 24, Are We There Yeti? The campers are stuck in the middle of the woods. The challenge is to race back to camp and tag a totem pole. The boys are on one team while the girls are on another. Since their host isn't here, somebody else takes charge. Another camper is eliminated because of someone else's eating habits and someone's bad mood. I don't like this one as much as its predecessor, if for no other reason than it's the exact same idea as Camp Castaways, and it does it worse than its predecessor, to be honest. I think that's because here they know it's a challenge, whereas in Camp Castaways they don't, and that kind of affects how the characters interact and how they act in general. There's also significantly less humor here than there is in Camp Castaways, leaving it almost dead periods scattered throughout the episode. I'd say this is a crappy cartoon. It's not funny, it's not interesting, and it comes right after an episode that does what this one does, but better. Episode 25, I Triple Dog Dare You. The 3 remaining campers participate in a series of dares that were made up by the eliminated campers. 2 campers make a temporary alliance which causes another camper to leave the island without her hair. Now, there are 2 campers left in the competition. Only one will win. Finally, Heather gets what's coming to her after so many fucking episodes. Heather gets her late karma, and it's beautiful. The challenge in this episode is very creative, and definitely gets points for that. And it also has its moments of brilliance. However, the whole episode feels empty. Almost like it's a Heather torture episode because it's about halfway in it. It just becomes entirely one-sided against her. I won't say it's a crappy cartoon because Heather definitely had it coming since episode 5, but it's definitely a mepisode overall. Episode 26, the very last episode really. The final 2 campers participate in one last challenge for the grand prize, with all of the previously eliminated campers returning to watch. After a race filled with sabotage, heartbreak, and brownies, one contestant wins the grand prize, and another goes home with a consolation prize. This is a very nice finale for the first season. While not the best finale of the whole seasons, it certainly does have its merits, comedy, and character interactions. The writing in general is well done. But, that said, the challenge is disinterested and disinteresting. I say disinterested because it feels like it takes an immediate back seat to the Gwen and Trent relationship, which certainly isn't awful, but it only gets a meh from me. And finally, episode 27, total drama island. With the competition over and someone winning the money, the campers are ready to head home. But will they get the opportunity to? The host has one final challenge for all the contestants, forcing them to form their own respective teams and participate in an all-out, no-rules hunt for the $1 million. However, after a series of unpredictable and out-of-control events, the money is lost, and there's only one way to settle this tie. This is an episode. This is the episode that should have been the finale. There are so many fun things that happen here. Courtney finding the island is right next to civilization, Ezekiel's interactions with female campers, and Justin even stepping up to the plate and doing something. Alongside the albeit slower humor and fun challenge, this episode is an animated angel. And now that we're done with all 27 of Season 1, let's look at how the season holds up. With 10 animated angels, 9 crappy cartoons, and 8 episodes, I say this episode should help demonstrate what I do and don't like out of this series. We'll do a top 5 faves and least faves to give some insight to what the best and worst is in my opinion. The worst crap from Season 1 with links below to the quick series review you can watch in the short little video. Number 5, Are We There Yeti? Number 4, The Big Sleep. Number 3, Brunch of Disgustingness. Number 2, Up the Creek. Number 1, Hot Capture. Best Animated Angels from Season 1, also with links below. Number 5, Phobia Factor. Number 4, Camp Castaways. Number 3, Trial by Tri-Arm Triathlon. Number 2, Hook, Line, and Screamer. Number 1, Basic Straining. And now to get to Total Drama Action, which also has 27 episodes. I'll see you guys then.